Johnny. Okay, so we're now specifically on I.
Just if I may, Mr. Chairman, just follow on from Councillor Casey's question, and because it is around I. So I got the impression there that there's no issue about getting a report. I got timing. So instead of October, what would be a proposed date? Because I'm happy to seek to amend my amendment on the basis of being specific. If it's not October, what month and year might it be?
Johnny, I'm actually going to ask Phil to just respond to that question.
Look, I don't mean to just sort of repeat what Johnny has said, but the issue is not the ability to provide a detailed report outlining what the specific program will entail for the next 12 months. The point was that a 3-year view requires that we have a lot of work done with the organisation, and it anticipates what budget will be provided in years 2 and 3, which won't be known until the annual plan concludes the budget parameters to support it. So that's why we're starting with a high level view, a high level 3-year view, and trying to point this towards you having detailed 12-month action plans that are reported quarterly, that are audited twice yearly by internal audit, that are discussed in the IMSB governing body meetings, that are part of the internal machinery in terms of Te Tai Takatini, the internal strategy. So there is a lot of apparatus around it, but it's very difficult to provide that a detailed view across a 3-year time frame that the member is asking for.
So, Mr. Chairman, that's an answer to my question, I guess. So I thought the reportage was, and the actions were based on the audit, which you already have. So, I mean, I've seen reports come here and then they put to the table, and then there's further reportage and things change and things evolve. But I'm reasonably concerned now that we just can't sort of put a hand on it. It is, I don't know, I mean, again, I tried to find a way through if it was about the timing, and I still believe it is the timing, because the information and is provided via the audit, and we'll say 2 audits now, and their recommendations. So anyway, Mr. Chairman, rather than rabbit on, we'll leave it at October and we'll see how the vote falls.
Councillor Hulse, then Councillor Cooper.
So, Mr. Chair, just a practical question. I'm pretty linear around these things. So my understanding is we're looking at what does Council and the Family do. The audit told us, had a look at what everyone does and said some of these things are not achieving the outcomes for Māori we'd expect. Out of the audit, dropped a list of to-dos. It's my understanding, I thought that then the Independent Māori Statutory Board were going to work through that list of to-dos, come up with some really practical, what are the interventions we need to make the outcomes better. That then comes back to us. We spread them out on the 3-year work plan for exactly the reasons that Phil has explained. We put the budget alongside them, and then we're constantly audited on that. If the IMS, I'm not understanding what Member Taipere and Member Tamahiri is saying. And I'll go so far as to say, if the IMSB is only auditing us, well then maybe PricewaterhouseCoopers could do all of that. Surely the IMSB, that you need to tell us what is the list of things to do and how are we going to do them, and then we put them into a work program and fund them as best we can. Otherwise I'm failing to understand what you do.
Councillor, also Chair, I'll endeavour to answer that question. And just go back to first, if I could go back to our first principles, we had to put in place, the Independent Māori Statutory Board had to put in place a number of large metrics upon which we could have a reasonable conversation in terms of Māori participation and how we would gauge the performance of that Māori participation and Council's participation as part of that. there are 3 streams of work. They cannot be seen as separate pieces of work because they're woven in together. The first piece of work is the treaty audit machinery that was for the first time put in place in any territorial authority in this country by PricewaterhouseCoopers for us, and it's been sitting with this group for now coming up 4.5 years. That's point one. Point two, the second one was that, well, if you've got a treaty audit, you've got to rate it against something. So we put in place, through the consultancy division of Waikato University, the Māori Wellbeings Framework. We then got KPMG to do a forensic scan of whether there was resource to achieve a coming together of those in a lift. That was quite a damning report, actually. But we move on because at least we've got a benchmark upon which we can proceed. Plus, we've got some major metrics in place upon which we can have a proper discussion. The difficulty we've got with council and its engagement with the Independent Māori Statutory Board, and there's a growing tension that those of you that were at our quarterly statutory board meeting with the governing board will start to identify. It's a bit like ping pong. And the amount of time that we just spent on this conversation, which really should have been sorted out as between staff at the Independent Māori Statutory Board and Mr Freeman's mob, is just unbecoming to have been placed on this table. So that's the first point I'd make in response to Councillor Hulse's views. What do we want? We want all of this, all the documentation I get from council in regard to its Māori unit is full of fluff. And that's great as a precursor to something that has specificity and substance. So you'd have to forgive us for wanting to know when can we get some of that. Now, to fall back on a default debate that we have 27 different family members in the council group is not good enough. Now, why it isn't good enough is because there is precedent galore in central government. And in what the family of, if you think this is a big shop, have a look there. And I'm pleased that Councillor Fletcher is here in understanding the precedents that have been set in central government that can easily be applied here. And in regard to Councillor Wood's amendment, which I'll talk to later, there is a complete answer to his discussion, which we did discuss and traverse at our quarterly Independent Statutory Māori Board meeting with the governing board. So what we're trying to do here is not run at the drum and convenience of your bureaucracy and officials, but try and get into the game to have some conversation. When we get into the game, we're told, oh, it's too hard, we've got to go through this whole process, it's a 3-year plan. Well, that might be well and good. Well, let's just have a look at where you are now. And so I want a report at the very latest. It doesn't have to be a 3-year report, but I do want to get an understanding where you're riding in regard to the architecture of what's been achieved in October, right? Because at this particular point in time, the documentation we get out of this unit at the moment doesn't give any light to that full stop. So, on that basis, I hope I've addressed some of the questions that Councillor Hulse has raised.
So, Mr Chair, just a supplementary.
I just want one thing. I let Member Tamahiri flow, and it was good, but
I won't flow.
We try not to criticise our staff, and I heard you comment on fluff. So we respect our staff for their reports.
Oh, well, so do I, Mr Chair. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. This thing is called the Finance and Performance Committee. Now, I don't believe that people's other observations around here in terms of moral turpitude on the way in which people express themselves necessarily carries weight. So either take out the performance from this committee, okay, and we won't have any comment, but to suggest that if you don't have at least a querulous view of officials' papers coming before you, there's something wrong with you. Thank you.
Thank you,
so my supplementary
yes.
is, and I have no concern about us having reasonably robust debates about these things. This is the finance report, so I'm going to treat this from a finance perspective, which is the reason for asking my question. So I'm interested in managing and stewarding our money effectively and efficiently. That's my fiduciary duty as a councillor. I don't quite understand Mr Tamahiri's answer, and I'm sorry, I'm still not very clear on to make the best use of the money that we have and the budgets that we have. We have some exceedingly large amounts of money going to PricewaterhouseCoopers and KPMG. We're being audited consistently on this to get the kind of metrics Mr Tamahiri is talking about. We don't necessarily have optics of the amount of money being spent to do this. All I'm saying is, I'm a practical person, I want to see the list of jobs that we're going to do over the next 3 years that will make an appreciable difference for Māori, out west, down south in particular. What are the practical on-the-ground list of jobs we're going to do? And I don't see that that's going to come out of consistently auditing or batting backwards and forwards between the IMSB, us, and Mr Freeland's team. I just am saying, when will we get that list of jobs that we can put into our budget? My understanding is that I would expect that to be coming to us now from the Independent Māori Statutory Board. What is the list of jobs to do to make that appreciable difference? And let's get on and do them.
Kia ora, Mr Chairman. Thankfully, Councillor Hulse agrees with aye.
Excuse me, Mr Chairman, I thought there was a speaking order.
Just because I was asked the question,
Cooper.
I was asked the question, Mr Chairman, by Councillor Hulse, and I want to respond, and that is simply that that is exactly what we're asking. We want the report that says what's the work program, so we can measure it against the completion. The thing that we've agreed to do as the Independent Māori Statutory Board, which was H, was agree to work together to get the rating for what's completed because of the ambiguity that's come out of PwC. So we thank you because we're talking the same language. What we're hearing is that we can't get the report of the specificity over a 3-year period. So Councillor Hulse, as I say, I think we actually asked for the same thing, and that's what I's asking for. What we've been told is it's going to be difficult to get the specificity of the jobs on the ground over that 3-year period. And as I say, Mr Chairman, I don't want to, I mean, I heard the officers and you heard from us. This is a reiteration of what we asked through the process. We could talk the pros and cons of it, but I think ultimately it will come down to the decision of the table of whether they think the report's appropriate now or not. But I do want to say that ourselves and Councillor Hulse or Deputy Mayor Hulse are asking for the same thing.
Thank you. Well, we may have a compromise, but I'm going to have Councillor Cooper and then Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Are we talking about this, or we're actually asking questions? So really
you can
clear,
do both, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. So my understanding is that each year staff in each department will have a work plan as to what projects they're doing, given the budget and the annual plan. Is that correct? Somebody?
That is correct.
Right. So I don't see this as any different. Of course, there might be a 3-year sort of strategic overview, but unless you've got a budget which is signed off every year, signed off annually, you can't be exact. But you can get a general drift of it, which we have in our long-term plan. So I don't see this as any different. And I actually think that we spend gazillions of millions of dollars on this, and that's all well and good. But why would we waste it having staff trying to make a plan that is going to be altered again and again over the 3 years rather than every year? And I'm really confused because I remember Taipari was saying we want to measure it. Well, you can't measure it until it's done. So for me, you've got the year and then you measure against that year as you go along. And of course, and I think that what Councillor Hulse was asking for was not for the staff to do it, but IMSB, well, you put up what you wanted us to do out of that report in 3 years, and then that's the template for the staff each year to look at and go, okay, now there's the actual specific actions we can do. So that's why I can't support this, because I think that we want to do efficient mapping every year rather than, doing something we can't be exact on and you can't measure it against it anyway.
Councillor Lee.
Yes, I'm going to ask questions if I could, Mr Chairman. I will focus on item 5, which Mr Tamahiri suggested.